At the end of the day, you can invest no matter how the economy is. You just have to look at your financial situation as a person. In a really tough financial situation, you may only want to put $100. You can always put something away.
Are you ready to transform your life? This is a no-nonsense show helping immigrants like you create generational wealth, even while working full-time. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Saket Jain.
Welcome back, my Great to Wealth listeners. Today, we're going to be speaking to Kevin Rodas. Kevin, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Good. Thank you again for coming on the show. You're the first financial planner that we have on the show. I'm super excited, especially given what's happening in the market right now. I'm super excited to talk to you. So thank you for taking the time.
Everybody's excited about what's happening right now.
I know. Seriously, man. It's crazy world right now.
It is.
Before we go there, we will go there during our conversation, Kevin. Give a brief introduction about who you are, what you do, who are you with, then we'll go from there.
Yeah, man. So, as you said, my name is Kevin. I'm pretty much almost a financial advisor, right? I work with, a couple of different companies. Most recently right now I'm with New York Life, which a lot of people know for insurance, but they also have financial advisors like myself. And I've been in finance, man, since I was 19. I started as a teller at Wells Fargo. Mm-hmm. And I basically built my whole career at Wells Fargo for the most part until recently. I moved up through the ranks through banker and all that stuff, got my licenses and all that. And they basically paid for everything, which was pretty cool. So that's one thing, I always tell people, speaking of finance, it's like, you can really grow your career anywhere you want, as long as you put the time in, regardless of what you're doing. A lot of people push
how did you end up being in finance?
Honestly,
is that what you always wanted to do, or how do you get in there?
Honestly, man, 100% honest, it just kind of just happened. Like and I think it's kind of like already in my blood. Like my mom has a business; she was in accounting. Mm-hmm. My dad has businesses. My cousin was in banking, but it's not something that I sat there and said, "Oh, this is what I want to do." I actually wanted to be a nurse.
You wanted to be a nurse?
Yeah, I wanted to be a nurse.
Wow, man, that's quite a pivot, Kevin.
Yeah, and I started going to college and started taking prereqs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To do nursing. I even did some, what do you call those? When you volunteer or whatever. I did some of that stuff to go see if nursing field was what I wanted to do. But after a while, I just was kind of like, I can't see myself doing this.
Right. Let's go deeper a little bit. What prompted you to become a nurse? Like, why was that an option? Did you see somebody... Did you see somebody in your family? What's going on?
I see my friend's mom and aunt. They made pretty good money and they were nurses.
Oh, I like it. So you love money. There you go. That's good.
I like money. So that's really all it was, man. There was nothing else behind it besides the money, right? And then you kind of just learn that's not always sometimes the most important thing, right?
Correct.
So yeah, I mean, so it was money. Money is why I wanted to be a nurse, and then as I started kind of getting more into it, I was like, this is not for me.
What specific part of being a nurse was not for you? Is it just working hours? Because for me, man, I can't see the side of the blood. If I see the side of the blood, I'm going to die. So what was it for you?
I think it was the hours. It was the way that the things that they did. Like, you got to have a heart to be a nurse. And I think that's why, a lot of women are nurses. Women are more nurturing than men are. Right? Just biologically, that's just how it is. Not all necessarily all the time, but like for me, I was like, yeah, I can't do it. I don't have the heart. I can't handle it. I was like, I don't have the stomach for it. I was like, I'm cool.
Yeah, so I hear you, man. I hear you. So then what happened from there? From there, you jumped to finance because a completely different shift, right? If you stayed at least in the medical industry, it would have made a logical sense that how did you pivot from that to finance?
So once I was going to college and stuff, I just kind of realized it just wasn't for me. I just didn't like college. I didn't care for it. I didn't care for studying. But I was like, I gotta at least try. But, I wasn't very fortunate as far as like I come from a very poor background, right? So my mom wasn't going to pay for all my college and all this stuff. So I was like, well, I got to work, so I started. My cousin was like, I can help you get a job at the bank if you want to work at the bank.
Uh-huh.
I was like, sure, man. I was like, I'll work wherever. I was like, I just need a job. And so he got me a job at the bank, and it just kind of went from there, to be honest.
So did you drop out of the college at that point, Kevin, or you're still with the college? You're still attending the college while you're working?
No, so I was still attending college and I was working. So I was doing both. I was kind of like going part-time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for a brief moment, I quit working. I started working less and going full-time. Right. And I was just working on the weekends and stuff like that at the bank and on Fridays, things like that. And they were pretty cool because they would work with my schedule. They were paying some of my classes, right? Because I switched my majors eventually to business.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't for me. Like, as much as I was trying to do it, I was like, this just was not for me. I was like, I can't do school. That was basically me. I was like, I can't do school. So I just couldn't do it. And so then I ended up eventually just stopped going, right? Like, I just completely stopped going. And I was like, all right, well, I was like, let me just work my job and see what I end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, with time, I just kind of started moving up at the bank, and I started thinking I'd make a career out of it.
Yeah.
Until I started meeting other people at the bank, like people that had money, like a lot of money, like my clients, right? And then I started picking their brain and kind of learning from them. And they've taught me a lot, to be honest. My clients.
So what were some of those learnings, Kevin? Help us understand that. So, of course, it seemed like you've taken quite a journey, right? So it doesn't seem like you hate learning. You just didn't like the way you were being taught at the college, right? Because you're definitely
I think that was
curious.
I think it was more just it wasn't for me to sit behind a desk and listen to the teacher and stuff, and it just wasn't for me. So I would pick my clients' brains, and I would ask them a lot of questions, and I would ask them about what they thought about, how they did this, how they got their money and stuff like that. A lot of them started learning were doing it, they had really good careers, which, obviously I had a pretty decent career. It wasn't bad. Or they had, or they were just very smart and they had a business, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them were business owners. To be honest, a lot of my clients that had a lot of money were business owners. That's what I learned was like, oh, wow, like you have a business. Because a lot of them didn't pay a lot of taxes. So people don't know. When you have a business.
So let's just qualify that. They were not trying to hide taxes. They were using the tax laws to their advantage through business because businesses are incentivized.
Exactly. So that's where I started learning how smart they were, because I was like, man, like if you own a business, like you could have a doctor making, $400,000, $500,000 a year. But if you have a business making $500,000 a year, the business owner makes
more. You keep more. Yeah. And then if you become a full-time investor, you keep even more.
Exactly.
Right? So it's
that's where
tax.
I learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
That's where I learned most of my stuff was from my clients. So
help us understand the first conversation you had with client, right? So of course you're now at the bank and you're working or dealing with people with money now. How did you approach your client? Do you remember the first conversation? What was going through your mind?
I would get nervous at first, to be honest, just because, like these people have money. I come from a poor background. Like I'm like, I don't know how they, what they're gonna think, of me and then all that stuff, and it would scare me a little bit. Be lying if I said it didn't. But I kind of would just like, I don't know, I just be myself. And I think that in the long run has always helped me in life, to be honest. I just always been myself. Obviously as my career went on, I became a little bit more professional. But as you can see, like even today, like I'm sitting here with you and I'm wearing a hat and a hoodie. That's just who I am. I've never tried to be something I'm not. I don't forget where I come from. And, a lot of people are like, oh, once you have money, you have to act a certain way, you have to do this. And I'm like, I mean, I do. I am very professional when I'm sitting down with you, you have money. But the thing was, when people hear me talk and we start talking about money, it's how you sound. And that's what really sounds. It's what you say. Do you know your stuff? Do you know what you're talking about?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And that, for me, that's what's helped me out. So when I sit down with these people, it's just getting to know them. I just ask them like, hey, how's it going? My name is Kevin, and I would just introduce myself and I just get to know them. That's it. Just get to know them like normal people. And I think when people feel like you're not coming after them for their stuff, they're more open to get to know you, to talk to you, and to see what you got to offer, what you can do for them.
I think that's very well said, man, Kevin. It's all in how well you can treat people. It's less about how much money you make. But I also believe that, you don't want to have transactional relationship. A lot of people are trying to figure out, what can I get from you? Can I get a free advice from you? Or can I get something from you? And if you can't offer me anything, I don't want to waste my time with you, right? But I don't think that's the approach you took. You're engaging all the conversation. Of course, you targeted a certain demographic because you needed to pick their brain, which is great. But you're still treating them like human beings. And if they said, no, you don't want to share, that does not mean you're going to have any problems with them. You're still going to treat them with respect.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, everything for me was just, and I got people that were very rude to me many times.
Yeah.
I got people who cursed at me, people who told me to F up, all those kind of things.
Wow.
And that happened mostly when I make calls.
Yeah.
But, nobody wants to get sold on the phone.
Of course.
But yeah, man, I mean, even through those times, like I never took offense to it. I was like, a bad day.
No, it's good for you, man. Good for you, Kevin. That's an amazing thing. And of course, you've come a long way from where you started as a teller to where you're now helping those rich people also putting their money to the right place, right? And you're showing folks how to carve out their own path of migration to wealth, which is amazing. So on that note, Kevin, right now, there's so much chaos in the market. That's why I was actually excited to talk to you. There's so much chaos going on in the market right now.
Yeah.
There's, of course, inflation is not an old news anymore. I think this is a constant thing that is happening. It's going up. The interest rates are going up. Some of the banks are in trouble. Give us the macro picture of what your thesis is, high level. And of course, I know you're licensed, so you may not be allowed to say a certain thing, so which is perfectly fine. So within the boundaries of what you're allowed to say, help us paint a picture there.
I will tell you my picture of my perspective of what I believe for myself.
Yeah.
Right? And you take as you wish. You can take it as how you want. I'm not anybody. But for myself individually, I am, very bearish on the market long term.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm very bullish right now in the short term. I think that the Fed will always find a way to try to save things the longer they can stall it, right? I think of the Fed like pulling a Band-Aid on somebody. They pull the Band-Aid, but the problem is they're pulling the Band-Aid so slow because they don't want people to be scared, right? So they're going to do whatever. They'll throw money at the market. I can't say that market makers and the Fed that they lie. I cannot say that, prove it, but to each his own, you take that opinion for yourself, right? But it is a very scary time. And I do think that long term, we may see some downfall. I honestly think that we will see the market, including the real estate market, take a hit, Yeah. I'm very big on that. I tell people, I'm like, unless you have the money, like if you have the money, I would not buy a house right now. That's what I say.
When you say unless you have the money, unless you have the down payment, or unless you have the money to do what?
Like as far as like, let's say you got $1 million, saved up, or like you're in a very good position financially for yourself, right? Where you don't see yourself losing your job, you don't see yourself having to worry about money, you have a good amount of money saved up, all that kind of stuff. If you see that, then you should be fine, right?
Yeah.
Buy a house. The housing market's always a good thing to buy. As long as you know you're going to be okay, do it because, long term, we all know. Long term, the housing market's always going to be okay.
Right.
Now, if we're talking about the short term, like I said right now, I honestly believe that we will eventually take a hit in the housing market. People think we have already, but I check, and this is not something that I even advise people on, right? That's not something I do. But I do tell my own friends, I'm like, hey, be careful with your money. Be careful what you're doing.
Right.
Try to buy a house, this and that, because I do tell people, I'm like, man, anything can happen. And honestly, I see it kind of going sideways pretty soon, And I tell people.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting observation, right? Because we're in alternative assets. We're definitely not in the Wall Street for our portfolio and for our investors. We always look at it, things like, why are you buying a certain asset? Are you trying to flip it in the next week, in the next month, in the next year? Or are you going to hold on to it for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Because eventually, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, most of the assets, especially the hard assets, you're going to be fine. Right? It's just that if the price fluctuation is going to bother you, like a very good friend of mine is looking to buy a house, and he's nervous about buying a house because the house price may go down. Like the question we were talking about was, but how long are you going to stay in that house? If everything works out, right? If you have the money, if you have the finances, if you have the cash flow coming in the way it is, how long can you see yourself in that house? Like about 15 years. I'm like, the question is not about will the price go down? It's can you sustain this house for 15 years? If that answer is correct, eventually your prices, at least at the nominal level, if not in the real terms, is going to be fine.
Exactly. And I mean, because you look at, everybody wants to talk about '08 right now, right? Because that's what you think about. 08. And I personally do not think it will be that bad. And like I said, I could be completely wrong. It could be worse.
Right.
So I do think it's going to be bad. I just don't think it'll be that bad just because there's more regulations now, right? But a couple of things I look at is, and this is coming from me as an investor, not me as an advisor, right? Because I don't help people with buying houses. Right. But me as an investor who has invested in real estate since 2014, which is how I've made most of my money, right? Because you look at the housing properties right now, when you look around anywhere, there's price cuts everywhere. There's houses on there for 60 to 90 days. Right. You look at the big markets like Dallas, Houston, California, the market in California is just slowly going down, right? Yeah. And that's what people in California a lot of people here make six figures. And that's funny because most people are like, man, you're making six figures. I'm like, no, dude, I need six figures to pay my bills.
To pay my bills, yeah. and you get taxed like the 50% tax bracket because it's Taxifornia, not California.
It's Taxifornia. That is 100% right. It's Taxifornia over here, man. It's insane. Like, I mean, the amount of money that we get taxed. I mean, I've been pretty blessed to learn the tax code very well, so I don't even pay California taxes.
Yeah. Good for you, man. I mean, that is the show is about, right? Because it's really not about how much you make.
It's about how much you
keep. About how much you keep, right? You could make $1 million and pay 50% taxes, or you can pick $500K and pay zero taxes. Your keep is the same. So it doesn't matter how much you make. It all depends upon how efficiently you made that money and how much of that you get to keep on a yearly basis.
I'm right with you. Yeah, no, I'm right with you. So, I mean, luckily, like, I've been able to learn things pretty well, like I said, from people, and it's helped me out a lot.
That's good, man. That's good. So help us, Kevin, understand, the last week has been crazy, with Signature Bank, with New York Signature Bank, with SVB, with Goldman Sachs having exposure to SVB. How are you looking at this information? And if somebody has their money in one of these banks or they have a large position, especially beyond the FDIC limit, how are you thinking? And feel free to say you can't respond because I understand you're an advisor and you may not be able to say a lot of things you want to say because you have to be careful. So I understand that. So within the constraints of what you can say, help us understand how you're thinking about this.
Well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I think that you can invest no matter how the economy is. You just have to look at your financial situation as a person, right? Yeah. If you're in a really tough financial situation, you may only want to put $100 away. I think you can always put something away because when you look at your budget, that's the biggest thing I tell people. Because I help clients of all kinds. I have clients, being in New York Life, I help people with life insurance too. Mm-hmm. So I have clients who, their net worth is nothing, right? And they have a salary and they make maybe 50 grand a year. And I still can help them save money, right? And then I have clients who are making, $5 million a year. And it's a different area. But as far as you tell me about the banks and everything that's happening, I always say, the big banks are usually okay. Because let's be honest, I mean, it's happened before, it's happened many times, and it'll probably happen again. But if something happens to the big banks, who bails them out?
Yeah, they're going to get bailed out, right? So it's always the case. I mean, bailing out the right thing or wrong thing, that's a different debate, but they're not going to let a JP Morgan Chase or banks like that fail. That's just
exactly. It's just, I mean, if that happens, I don't think your issue is even worrying about where you're investing.
Completely agree. You got a much bigger, it's like a Hiroshima on the US, right? Kind of like you need to worry about your life and other things than worry about your investments.
I'm looking at America as a third world country, right? I mean, literally, if you see, and a lot of people, one thing I really do not like this about numbers in the market and being in finance, because I'm also guilty of it myself sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's something that people are always like, oh, I can't wait for everything to dump. I can buy a house. I can do this and this and that. The one thing I don't like about that is you forget how many people get hurt throughout that process.
Correct.
We lose our humanity throughout that. And I don't like that. Numbers and money makes people lose their humanity, right? That's something I'm not a fan of, because you see this bank situation right now you're talking about, and people are scared. They're in fear. They're at the door at 5 a.m. trying to go take out their money because they're tripping. Like, that just shows you how much, people are scared. People are worried. And to you, maybe $100 is not a lot, but to that one person, that $100 might be all they have to feed their kids.
Right.
So that's one thing I'm not a fan of with this situation, but I will say that there have been bank failures in the past few years. They just don't talk about them as much. If you look at the you can find information. There has been a few bank failures recently. I do think that there will be more. I do think so. I do, because I do think that, I couldn't say which banks or what, but I could say that I do think there will be more. You look at the situation with the forbearance. That was a big issue. And a lot of banks were not fans of pushing the payments to the end of the loan.
Right.
So there's a lot of people who may have done a forbearance for 6 months, a year, 2 years. And if you cannot have all that money to pay that back, now you're talking about bankruptcy.
Right.
And the more of those houses that they have, the more the bank gets into having problems, right? And that's going to cause domino effect. So
that's such an interesting world, man. Of course, a lot to be unfolded, as it's going to happen in front of everyone's eyes. So how are you telling your clients right now? What are you telling them? What are the top 2 or 3 things you're saying? Of course, big banks, move the money to the big banks, right?
Big banks are always good. I mean, I know a lot of people hate big banks, but big banks are good. Big credit unions are always good. I mean, in California, we have the Delco Travis Credit Union, the huge big credit unions. I don't know, what credit unions are. They got different states, but they're usually pretty good.
So are credit unions usually safer than the banks? Help me understand that, because I don't know that. So it's more of a curiosity from my end. How do you look at, like a DCFU or stuff like that, where these credit unions are well established, but I've never heard a credit union failing. And maybe they do. I just don't hear it.
I honestly think they're usually pretty safe, because they're very good to their customers and very good to their clients. The problem is when you're trying to grow, when you're trying to have certain things done, credit unions can't do them. Right? Like if you travel out of state, it gets harder, right? Trying to talk more about investments, it gets harder.
Got it.
I mean, me personally, I have a big bank and I have a credit union. So I have the best.
What about treasuries? How are you thinking about T-bills right now? The short-term T-bills.
I can't say much about that, but I will say that they're safe. They're always pretty safe, right? Bonds too, they're always pretty safe. Mutual fund, right? So if people want to invest, those are things to look at, right? Mutual funds are always pretty safe because they're diversified, right? So you're protected if the market goes down, you're protected if the market goes up, right? So you're looking at getting an average rate of, some mutual funds give you 20%, and then when they're negative, they'll only be negative like 10%, right? Life insurance is another, you look at life insurance as well, like whole life and variable life and those kind of things. Same scenario. They're always pretty safe. Nothing is, and I always tell this to people though, nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Not even the cash in your mattress is guaranteed though, because you look at that, the cash in your mattress is not worth what it was worth 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We had COVID. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, in reality, and I told you this earlier, I'm a risk taker. So I mean, in reality, you don't have to be me. Don't be me. But you gotta take a little bit of risk. A lot of people are very old school with the keep cash, keep cash in your mattress. But I'm like, it's good to have cash. I'm not saying don't have any cash. If you have cash, and you feel comfortable having it at home, that's fine. But yeah, like we said,
but there are other ways to hold cash, right? And I know you may not be able to say that, but precious metal, buy gold, buy silver. Because it's still cash.
Awesome because if the market does go down, gold goes up.
I'm going to look at what's happening with the price of the gold right now. I have a very strong feeling, and I think that's probably true, is people are scared of the banks. So they're just going towards what they know the best, which is gold and silver, right? Mm-hmm. And if there is a bank run and the cash crunch is there, you can always use silver coins to pay for your bread, to pay for the food, to pay for your rent, right? You can always use that against something else that you need to survive. The worst problems always get fixed. 30 to 70 days, everything will be normal. we're trying to make sure that can you survive for those 30 to 70 days, right? 30 to 90 days, maybe 2 to 3 months. If you can survive, you need to have reserves for that. And precious metal is not bad.
No.
Now, you need to buy it and not buy an ETF. You need to have a physical possession of those. So you have to do it sensibly. You don't want to announce to everybody that you're doing it.
Guys.
Yeah, I'm buying gold, guys. Here's a $20,000 gold that I'm buying. Come have a party at my house, right? You don't want to do that, but it's good to keep some, always.
I definitely agree. I think it's good to have some. I think there's a lot of different ways. You can actually even technically buy like gold ETFs on the stock market. They exist, right? So if you don't want to, you're like, I don't know where to go buy gold, or maybe it's too expensive to go buy it from the store down the street. You can just, cash to gold places and stuff. But you can go online and you can buy, actually, there's gold ETFs you can buy, or you can talk to an advisor to help you with that as well. Yeah.
No, that's true, man. That's true. Kevin, well, this is a lot of good information here, man. And I'm sure as we continue talking, we're going to get more nuggets from you, but I want to respect your time here. So help us understand, Kevin, in your journey through your life from literally rag to riches, from where you started to where you are, if you were to go back to your 20-year-old self, your 17-year-old self, right? What are some of the insights you'll share with them?
If I was to go back to who I met, I would have told myself to buy more properties.
Yeah.
When I was lucky enough to buy 5.
Awesome, man. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, between 2014 and 2019, I bought 5 properties.
Yeah.
And if I was to go back, I would have told myself to budget myself better, because I was a spender and I would spend a lot of money. I was making 6 figures and I was living off 6 figures.
Right.
The more I made every time, the more I was spending. And which is
the more your lifestyle, right? The more your lifestyle expanded.
Yeah, it's a problem in America. Everybody does it, and I was guilty of it. The only difference was I was also buying properties as I was doing that, right? So every time, okay, cool, I'm going to go buy a house. Now I'll go buy a car.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go buy a house. Now I'm going to get a newer car. Yeah. That was my problem, right? So instead of, I should have been like, I'm going to buy 3 houses, and then I'll go buy a car if I have some money left over,
Correct.
But that's probably something I would have told myself back then. I also think that I would have budget. Budgeting is so important. People don't like to look at their accounts. They don't like to see how much they're spending. Budgeting is so important. One thing I did do right was I always took care of my credit, which was very important. Credit is very important. But I always also, as someone who took a lot of risk and messed up his credit for a moment, I will tell people that as long as you can bounce back if you messed it up. I've done it.
Correct.
Don't think it's over. Like, oh man, what am I gonna do for it now?
Right.
You can bounce back.
That is awesome, Kevin. Kevin, last question, my buddy. So before we let you go to your wonderful world of advisory, where should the humanity move towards, man? Where do you see humanity migrating towards? Where's the need? Where's the gap? Have you seen somebody who's actually thought about it?
I'm scared, to be honest. I'm a very faithful man. And I love meeting people who are faithful, whether it be the same religion, different religions matter to me. I think we all have different religions, but at the end of the day, I think there is just only one God.
The path is the same, right? Yeah, they all, but the destination is the same.
The same too when you listen to somebody else's religion. That's the reason like my
Correct.
I am very scared, man, to be honest with you. I think we are in a very, not to get too into this kind of stuff, but I think as humanity, we're in a very, very fragile stage. There's 2 extremes that are way too extreme on both ends. I think people are way too extreme on one side, way too extreme on the other. And I think that it's okay to be in the middle. And I think people have forgotten that. You go back to the 90s and stuff, and that was okay. In America, everything is about the Republican and the Democratic parties, right? And it's like, who cares? Like, man, what about people?
What about people? Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody feels like, if you have a different opinion, then it's a horrible thing. And I don't. I think it's good to listen to other people. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe they're wrong. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it does scare me a little bit, mostly if the country's not able to get things together and we do have some type of collapse, because it will be worldwide. And one thing about people is when there's fear, there's crime. People are worried about guns right now.
Correct.
Because something bad happens. When there's really, things are already getting bad. There's a lot of people that are already losing their house, losing their jobs. There's layoffs. There's no people are hiring anymore. Nobody knows. And that creates fear. And when there's fear, there's a scary world.
No, I agree, man. I agree. So one of my mentor, Robert Kiyosaki, he always talks about there's no two sides of the coin. There are three sides of the coin. The head, the tail, and the edge. You want to stand on the edge so you can look at the head and the tail and keep both the perspectives in your brain and hold them together to make sure that whatever decision you're making, it's not because you're only seeing one side, you're seeing both sides. And then you're making the decision, right? Which I think is what you're trying to say as well, as it's okay to be a Democrat, it's okay to be a Republican. We're not saying you can't, but what about humanity? And that's important. That's an important perspective because that goes beyond your political affiliations.
Yeah, just like religion. I mean, I'm a faithful, Christian. I believe in God. And that doesn't mean that I don't have friends who aren't of a different religion. I have Muslim friends, and I like to listen to their stuff. And they tell me a lot of things like that. I have friends who are, I have a friend who's a Buddhist, which is like really random.
Nice.
But that's what he believes in. And I'm like, cool. And he's a very peaceful guy,
Right.
Really cool guy. Yeah.
No, so that's awesome. Kevin, this is an interesting conversation, man. I think we can go on and on and on. And I really enjoyed talking to you here. But I want to be respectful of your time. So where can people find you, Kevin?
Yeah, man. Anytime anybody wants to find me, you can email me at kevin@kr27group.com.
K as in kite, R as in rabbit, KR number 2, 7group.com.
Yep. That's a business that I used to have and I still use that email.
Nice.
So you can reach me out there, or you can also reach me at my Instagram handle, which it's always the best way to reach me is Instagram. And that's the same thing. It's KR27_LLC.
Got it.
That's
Perfect.
KR27_LLC. Yeah, if people want to reach out to me and, they just have questions or they want to, just chat or anything, really. I mean, happy to just connect with anybody. I love meeting new people. So awesome, don't feel like you're bugging me. Yeah.
We'll make sure the links are included in the show notes below, Kevin. You seem like a guy who I can have beers with. So again, thank you. So I don't think anyone will have an issue reaching out to you. And I applaud you to being who you are. Thank you again for doing all the great things in life and helping people like my audience to better their lives. So appreciate it. Thank you, buddy. And we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you.
If you got value from this episode, you might consider sharing this content with a friend. But most importantly, be sure to take action on what you've learned. One way you can take the next step is to connect directly with Socket on an investor call. That link is waiting for you in the show notes below.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. Please consult your own advisors when making any investment decisions. Keep listening. We'll see you on the next episode.